Good evening. And welcome to another enthralling version of Diatribes from the Voice of Doom. Now here is your enthralling and entertaining and elucidating host, Voice of Doom. Add a little rhythm to the explosions. I hope when the bombs fall that they are synchronized so that it's kind of a jaunty little rhythm. But that's Ludwig van, as you can see. I'm going to try something a little different today. I'm going to how to use this device to give you examples of music as I explain the history of music. Now, this will probably be the driest and most boring diatribe I've done so far. But it may be interesting if you're interested in the history of music. Now, my last one I just talked about my early background and a few impressions I had about music. Now let's get into the weeds a bit. Let's talk about how music started, which nobody really knows, but I'm going to attempt to try to figure out. Maybe anyone interested could put their 2 cents in the comments. And you can also listen to my playlist because I'm compiling some of the materials I'm using for this series onto that. And you should also go to the playlist for my own original music and the best of Voice of Doom, which has some of my better crap. But let's get back to music. Now, I was toying with the idea during the clampdown. Well, it wasn't during, I started it during then. Didn't have any means to make it happen, but especially after I got that windfall that since I don't have to work right now, I will put out outline for my music appreciation class, which I could teach to a community center or do private classes. And I didn't really know how, but I knew if there's a will, there's a way. If I made it happen, it would happen. But I started the outline, and the first thing I thought was, who was the first person to come up with music? So I'm trying to go back to the neolithic era, the time when they were just learning how to use tools. And I did a little research, and they said it goes back about 40,000 years or so. They can't pinpoint for sure, but they say that they found evidence of bones which were used as a flute. They were blown through. Now, how they came to that conclusion, I don't know, but I will say this. I fantasized that if I went back in time to the Neanderthal or caveman era, got out of my time machine and walked stealthily around, because there'd be Bengal tigers and all kinds of things. I don't know, mastodons, I have no idea. I don't know much about anthropology, but I fantasize that as I'm walking through this Serengeti, I suddenly hear music. I hear singing. And then I creep over to the fire that I see off in the distance. I'd see a bunch of cavemen sitting around a fire singing, and it's real good harmony. And here's the reason I think so. They had plenty of time on their hands back then. Once the basics were taken care of, they had a watering hole, they had their cave, go hunt, bring back a carcass. They got a lot of time to spare. And they had thousands upon thousands upon thousands of years to not develop one iota. So they had time. And I think that from my research that the cavemen imitated the sounds of the animals. So they would imitate the sounds of the birds. And one guy might actually be good at imitating birds after a while because he has plenty of time to practice. He has forever. He has absolutely nothing else to do but sleep. Because while he's going on the hunt, he can be whistling. Or he can be imitating. So another person joins a few hundred years later, and he starts whistling, and they suddenly realize, hey, that sounds good the way you did that. And then they vocalize a few hundred years later. And a few hundred years later, there's 3 of them vocalizing. They have plenty of centuries to evolve. So in my theory, and correct me if I'm wrong, all you musicologists who know way more than I do, is it possible that they could have sounded like Maori New Zealand Islanders, beautiful harmonies, or the Voi Bulgare, beautiful harmonies, or the Mamas and the Papas, I mean, whatever. Is it possible? Now, I have another theory that is a little more obscure, but I think that rhythm may have been started by someone who might have been autistic or obsessive compulsive, OCD. Because they probably were back in the Neanderthal days, and they didn't get clubbed over the head by their tribe because they were just too much trouble. And maybe they just went boom, 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 boom. After 200 years of hearing that, somebody else threw in boom, papa, boom, papa, boom, and it just takes off from there. Because they got a lot of time on their hands. So I stipulate that music was very developed and very complex back in the Neolithic era. I'm the only one who has that theory because I just made it up out of whole cloth. But let's go into history now. They had horns, Jericho, ram's horns. They figured out how to make noise out of those things. Now here we are at the Roman era. See if this works. Probably get commercials first, but you see, annoying. I got things to say about those commercials too, but I'll save that for another time. Here's some Roman music that I found, and it's very dubious whether it's really Roman music, because I'll tell you more about how music was destroyed by certain organizations. So some of this is just conjecture, but this is a Roman battle song, and it sounds very tuned. And I have played some Roman music just for fun in the band, and you're supposed to blow through it. They're really, really primitive instruments, so they would not sound this harmonious. They wouldn't sound this. The timbre, the sound is more clean than they would sound in the Roman days. But you get the idea. Now, luckily for society, the Christian church took hold in the early 1st, 2nd, 3rd century. Enough of that. And that was lucky for everybody because they proceeded to destroy all the music they could find because it was associated with paganism. So what they did was they destroyed it all and started their own thing. Now, if it weren't for that, we would not have modern music as it is today. Here's an example. Let's have a commercial. Oh no. Gregorian chant, circa 450. The bell was extra added. That'd be considered kind of fancy. It's a cappella, no particular rhythm. Okay? So the Christian church gave us that. And it's beautiful. It really is. But they probably frowned on dancing and frowned on, the Roman music were used for orgies and all kinds of different rituals. So they had to get rid of that loud, raucous music. Now you see how the pattern is. It was loud and raucous in the Roman era and the Christian era, talking early Catholic Church, 5th century. Got rid of it and came up with this. Okay? You're starting to get it now? About 500 years later, they advanced. They were really, really rocking now. This is Perotum Vidurant Omnes, circa 1198. Getting way more fancy. Notice that? I'm sure the parents were having a fit when they heard this music. No, all the music was for church. All the serious music that is still written that we can find were written for church. The church had the monopoly on music for about 1,000 years, maybe 700. There were minstrels and people of that nature running around playing their flutes, but none of that music is extant. In other words, preserved. It's kind of interesting. It's kind of repetitive. That's Perotin. Another one of his contemporaries was Leonin. This is written around.
Policyholders, we chose Cincinnati Insurance. As independent
This
agents,
is written
we recommend it to our
around.
clients too.
Around the same time, 1150. No, he was born in 1150, so it was written around 1175 or so. I don't know if you can hear. It's not started yet. It's more simple. It's called organum. Organum is 3 or 4 lines of vocal with a basso continuo at the bottom. I don't remember all that from college, and I couldn't understand it when I was learning it. All kinds of different stuff. It's kind of like Gregorian chant with a little bit more pizzazz. So this is 500 years later, and then we come to the Ars Nova, which is around the Renaissance period. And we have Orlando di Lasso, otherwise known as Orlandus Lassus. Now we're getting somewhere. You see how it's developing? This is getting toward the 1400s, getting in there. Don't know the exact dates, but you see how it's progressing. And it will continue to progress until you have something to the effect of, and this is about 400 years later, maybe 350. But that's jumping ahead a bit. But I know this is very boring and not well done, but I'm trying to learn how to coordinate this music with the commercials with my very unfunny lecturing. But I won't speak more of this ancient music. I wanted to give you the basic foundation on which our music is based to this day. And we will get more into some stuff that may be more familiar on our next episode. It will have the long hairs, like this guy. And we'll get into the Baroque period. And we will get into... what else will we get into? The classical period, Mozart. We will get into the Romantic period, this guy, and others. And that should cover the next episode. We will move on from there, and then I'll throw in a few more of my where I was at musically. Right now I don't have a piano because I'm in 6th or 7th and 8th grade, and we didn't have a piano when we moved to Hawaii, so I stopped playing for a couple of years and then got back into it later. And had to learn all about what modern music was because I didn't know anything. And I made a great leap forward. So we'll talk about that next time. So, enjoy this genius greatest musical genius in the history of the galaxy. That's saying a lot. So, I'll leave you. It's done. I'll talk to you next time. And have a musical soiree of an evening. Please look it off.